Do you know what one of the most powerful decisions in life really looks like? It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not winning an argument, proving a point, or forcing something to work long after it has already begun breaking you. Sometimes, the strongest decision a person can make is much quieter than that. It is the moment you stop fighting for what keeps draining you. It is the moment you look at a person, a habit, a pattern of thinking, or even an old version of yourself, and calmly admit, this is no longer healthy for me. No big speech. No dramatic goodbye. No need to explain yourself to people who are never going to understand anyway. Just clarity. Just peace. Here at Stoicism Breath, that is where real transformation begins, not in chaos, but in the silent decision to protect your inner world before it is worn down any further. One of the quietest prisons many people live in is the need to be liked. And the reason it is so dangerous is because it rarely looks like a prison from the outside. In fact, it often looks like success. You are easy to get along with. You smile. You say yes. You adapt. You keep the peace. People feel comfortable around you. They appreciate you. They accept you. But beneath that smooth surface, something heavier is happening. Every time you hide what you really think just to avoid tension, every time you laugh at something that does not feel right, every time you swallow your truth so others can stay comfortable, you move a little farther away from yourself. And after a while, the exhaustion becomes impossible to ignore. You may look connected on the outside, but deep down, you feel unseen. Because the version of you that people are praising is not the full you. It is the edited version. It is the safe version. It is the version built for approval. For many people, this mask started early, maybe in childhood, when being approved of felt like safety, maybe in school, when fitting in felt more important than being honest, maybe in relationships, where you learned that disagreement created distance, but silence kept things calm. So you adjusted. You softened your opinions. You learned how to read the room. You became the person who would not make things hard for anyone else. And at first, that mask felt useful. It helped you avoid conflict. It protected you from rejection. It made life smoother. But over time, the cost begins to show. The approval never fully satisfies you, because somewhere deep inside, you know people are not fully accepting you. They are accepting the role you are performing. That is why so many approval-seeking people feel lonely in a crowded room. They have learned how to stay connected, but not how to be truly known. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that peace comes from alignment, when your thoughts, your words, and your actions come from the same place. But when those parts of you are disconnected, the mind becomes restless. Even simple conversations start feeling exhausting, because you are no longer just speaking. You are managing, editing, performing, watching every word, avoiding every possible disagreement. It becomes a full-time job to maintain an image. And the longer you live that way, the harder it becomes to tell where the mask ends and you begin. That is why being liked by everyone is not always a sign of strength. Sometimes it is a sign that you have been cutting away the sharp, honest, meaningful parts of yourself just to remain acceptable. But when you remove too much of yourself, you also remove the very thing that makes your presence real. Epictetus said that if you want to improve, you must be willing to seem foolish or be misunderstood in the eyes of others. That idea makes people uncomfortable, because almost everyone wants approval. Almost everyone wants to be seen as good, agreeable, and easy to love. But there is freedom in letting go of that need. The moment you stop shaping yourself around everyone else's expectations is the moment you begin reclaiming your life. And that does not mean becoming cold rude, or combative. It does not mean rejecting kindness. It means something much simpler and much braver. It means allowing your thoughts, your words, and your behavior to come from the same honest place. It means saying, "This does not feel right to me." It means setting a boundary when something keeps draining your energy. It means giving yourself permission to outgrow the version of you that made other people comfortable. At first, that shift can feel strange. You may pause in moments when you would normally agree automatically. You may feel guilty for saying less, for explaining less, for no longer bending so quickly to keep everything smooth. That discomfort is real, and it is natural. When a pattern has been with you for years, the mind mistakes familiarity for safety, even when that familiarity has been slowly suffocating your individuality. But something powerful begins to happen when you stop performing for acceptance. Your life becomes simpler. You stop replaying conversations in your head, wondering whether you said the perfect thing. You stop changing your personality depending on who is in front of you. You begin showing up with a calm, steady consistency. Not forced, not rehearsed, just real. And when that happens, the people around you begin to change too. Some relationships may fade, because they were built on the version of you that always adapted, always agreed, always made space for everyone else. But other relationships will grow stronger, because for the first time, they are finally meeting the real person behind the mask. That process is not always comfortable, but it is deeply liberating. Because the goal of life is not to be accepted by everyone you meet. The goal is to live in a way that lets you respect yourself when the day is over. The goal is to look at your own life and know that you did not abandon yourself just to be more digestible to others. When you remove the mask of constant approval seeking, you are not losing connection. You are making room for better connection. You are making space for relationships where you do not have to shrink, soften, or hide in order to belong. And that quiet decision, the decision to stop performing for acceptance, may not look impressive from the outside. No one may applaud it. No one may even notice it right away. But inside you, it changes everything. Because peace does not come from controlling how others see you. Peace comes from no longer betraying yourself just to be seen well. And sometimes, that is the most powerful transformation a person can make. There comes a moment in life when you realize something that changes the way you see everything. Peace does not come from constantly managing how others see you. It does not come from controlling opinions, impressions, or expectations. Real peace begins the moment you allow yourself to be seen as you truly are. And just as powerful as that realization is another quiet truth that many people overlook. Most lives are not lost through sudden failure, but through quiet delay. Delay rarely looks dangerous. In fact, it often sounds responsible. It sounds like maturity. It sounds logical. You hear it in simple phrases that feel harmless in the moment. "I'll start tomorrow." "I'll do it when things calm down." "I just need more time to prepare." These words feel safe, even wise. But repeated often enough, they begin to steal something you can never get back: time. And here at Stoicism Breath, one of the most important lessons drawn from Stoic philosophy is this: time is not loud when it leaves you. It disappears quietly, day by day, decision by decision. Most people believe procrastination is a problem of laziness. But in reality, it is rarely about laziness at all. More often, it is fear wearing the mask of logic. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of failing in front of others. Fear that once you finally try, the dream you have been holding onto might collapse under real pressure. So instead of risking disappointment, the mind chooses delay. Waiting feels safer, because nothing has been tested yet. Nothing has been proven wrong. You remain in the comfort of possibility, where everything still looks perfect in your imagination. The mind becomes very skilled at defending this delay. It tells you that you are being careful, that preparation is necessary, that timing must be perfect. But life does not arrange itself into perfect moments. Circumstances rarely become ideal, and confidence rarely arrives before the first step. In truth, clarity is not born from endless thinking. Clarity is born from action. It comes from movement, from trying, from doing, even when you feel uncertain. Think about how many ideas, dreams, or plans once excited you deeply. Now imagine how many of them slowly faded, not because they were impossible, but because they were postponed long enough to lose their energy. The Stoics warned about this danger centuries ago. Seneca once observed that people guard their money carefully, counting every dollar, protecting every investment. Yet those same people treat time as if it were endless. But time is the most fragile resource you possess. Once it passes, it cannot be recovered, negotiated, or earned back. Every day spent postponing something meaningful quietly disappears from the only life you will ever live. There is another hidden cost to procrastination that most people never talk about: the mental weight it creates. When you avoid something important, it does not disappear. It stays with you. It lingers in the background of your thoughts. Even when you are watching television, working, or talking to someone else, a small part of your mind remembers the unfinished task. That quiet tension drains your focus, your energy, and your peace. And strangely, the task itself is often not as difficult as the anticipation of it. The longer you avoid something, the bigger it appears in your imagination. What once felt simple begins to feel overwhelming. Delay creates pressure, and pressure makes starting feel even more intimidating. Breaking this cycle does not require dramatic motivation or a sudden transformation of your personality. It begins with something much smaller. A single action taken now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Write one paragraph instead of outlining an entire book. Take a short walk instead of planning a perfect fitness routine. Send a message you have been overthinking for days. Small actions create movement, and movement begins dissolving fear. Each step, no matter how small, teaches your mind something powerful. Progress does not require certainty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again that the present moment is the only time that truly belongs to us. The past is finished. The future is uncertain. But the present holds the possibility of action. Every meaningful change begins inside that narrow window of time called now. And when you begin acting instead of postponing, something subtle but powerful begins to shift inside you. You start trusting yourself more. Each completed action becomes proof that your intentions are not just thoughts floating in your mind. They are decisions shaping your reality. That growing trust becomes discipline. And discipline, over time, becomes freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from regret. Failure may still happen. Mistakes will still appear. Some attempts will not lead where you expected. But action always gives you something valuable: information, experience, and growth. Delay, on the other hand, gives you nothing but unanswered questions and quiet regret. Many people reach a moment later in life when they look back and realize that the greatest risk was never trying and failing. The greatest risk was waiting so long that the opportunity slowly disappeared. Regret rarely comes from the things you attempted. It usually comes from the chances you never allowed yourself to take. The decision to stop postponing your life does not require grand announcements or sudden perfection. It requires honesty. It requires admitting that the future you keep imagining will never arrive unless you begin building it today. The moment you stop handing your dreams over to an imaginary tomorrow is the moment you begin reclaiming control over your life. From the outside, this shift may look small, but inside, it is powerful. Because each time you choose action over delay, you are no longer watching life pass by, you are finally participating in it. Yet even when you begin moving forward, another heavy burden often remains: the weight of the past. One of the heaviest things a person can carry is not something happening today, but something that happened years ago. The past has a strange habit of returning when you least expect it. A conversation from long ago suddenly replays in your mind. A mistake you once made still stings as if it happened yesterday. A moment of embarrassment, betrayal, or loss keeps resurfacing, refusing to fade. Many people believe revisiting the past is necessary to grow, and in some ways, that is true. Reflection can create wisdom. But there is a quiet difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering allows you to learn. Reliving traps you. When you relive the past, your mind replays the same scene over and over, searching for a different ending that will never come. You imagine the better words you could have said, the smarter choices you wish you had made, the outcome you wish had unfolded differently. But no matter how many times the mind returns to those memories, the result never changes. The past cannot be edited. The Stoics understood that suffering is often extended not by the original event, but by the thoughts that follow it. What happened once becomes something you experience again and again through memory. A single painful moment multiplies into hundreds of painful thoughts. And over time, the past begins shaping how you see yourself. You start identifying with mistakes, with losses, with moments that belong to an earlier version of you. But those moments were chapters, not your identity. When you carry the past as a constant emotional weight, it slowly drains your energy just as surely as procrastination drains your time. And here at Stoicism Breath, one of the most powerful shifts a person can make is learning to place the past in its proper position, not erased, not denied, but behind you. As a teacher, not as a prison. Because the moment you stop reliving what cannot be changed is the moment your energy returns to what still can be. And that is where real growth begins. There comes a point in life when you begin to realize something deeply unsettling, yet incredibly freeing. You start noticing that the way you see yourself is not always based on who you are today, but on things that happened years ago, moments when you were younger, less experienced, and still figuring life out. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you trusted the wrong person. Maybe you failed at something that once meant everything to you. And slowly, without even noticing, those moments begin turning into labels. You tell yourself, "I'm the one who failed. I'm the one who got left behind. I'm the one who made the wrong choice." Over time, these labels stop sounding like memories and start sounding like truth. But here at Stoicism Breath, one of the most important reminders is this: those labels are not truth. They are fragments of history that the mind has repeated so many times that they feel permanent. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the mind holds extraordinary power, not just to remember pain, but to decide how long that pain continues. The event itself does not follow you forever. What follows you is the meaning you attach to it. When you allow past moments to dominate your present thoughts, you unknowingly allow yesterday to control the direction of your life today. And one of the reasons people struggle to let go of painful memories is the belief that letting go means pretending nothing happened. Many people fear that releasing the pain somehow erases responsibility or excuses the harm. But letting go does not mean denial. It does not mean forgetting. It means loosening the grip that memory has on your daily life. It means remembering the lesson without reopening the wound every single day. Real growth does not happen when memories disappear. It happens when the memory stays, but the emotional weight attached to it begins to fade. The event becomes part of your story, not the title of your entire life. Think about a book. A single difficult chapter does not define the whole story. Yet many people treat their past mistakes as if they are the entire identity of the book itself. The mind often resists letting go because pain can become familiar. And strangely, familiarity, even painful familiarity, can feel safe. When a memory repeats often enough, it starts to feel like part of who you are. Letting go, in that moment, feels like losing a piece of yourself, even if that piece was built around suffering. But the person you are today is not the same person who lived through those moments. You have learned more. You understand more. You are stronger than you were back then. Healing does not require forgetting the past. It requires placing the past where it belongs, behind you. The past is meant to stand behind you as a teacher, not in front of you as a barrier. When you allow it to stay where it belongs, something remarkable happens. Space begins to open inside your mind. And in that space, new experiences can grow. New ideas, new confidence, new possibilities. None of these can take root in a mind that is constantly replaying old pain. There is also a quiet sense of freedom that appears when you stop arguing with history. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What did this teach me?" Instead of wishing you had acted differently, you begin noticing how much you have changed since then. The story shifts. It stops being about regret and slowly becomes about transformation. But this shift does not happen overnight. Letting go of the past is rarely a single decision. It is a repeated choice made again and again. Each time the memory returns, each time the old scene starts replaying, you remind yourself gently, that moment is over. The lesson has already been learned. The person who lived through that moment is no longer the same person you are now. With time, the emotional charge begins to soften. The memory loses its ability to control your mood. It stops defining your identity. It becomes something you remember without being trapped inside. And when that happens, something powerful unfolds inside you. Your mind feels lighter. Your focus returns to the present moment. Your energy starts flowing toward the life that is still happening right now, not the life that ended years ago. The quiet decision to stop living inside your past is one of the most powerful forms of freedom a person can experience. Because when you release the endless replay of what once happened, you finally create room for what is still possible. Yet as many people begin freeing themselves from the past, another painful pattern often appears: the quiet need to beg for love, attention, or recognition. And this habit rarely looks obvious. Most people do not walk up to someone and literally ask to be loved. Instead, it shows itself in subtle ways. You try harder than anyone else in the relationship. You give more patience, more effort, more understanding. You convince yourself that if you just try a little harder, give a little more, sacrifice a little longer, eventually the other person will recognize your value and choose you the way you have already chosen them. At first, this behavior feels like loyalty. It feels like commitment. It feels like love. But over time, it slowly transforms into emotional exhaustion. When someone begins chasing love in this way, their energy starts shifting. Instead of feeling secure, they begin measuring their worth through someone else's reactions. A delayed reply suddenly feels like rejection. A small change in tone feels like distance. silence begins to create anxiety. The mind starts searching for ways to fix the situation, becoming more helpful, more patient, more understanding, without realizing what is happening underneath. You begin negotiating your self-respect in exchange for the hope of being valued. Many people learn this pattern early in life. Perhaps they grew up in environments where love felt conditional, where approval came only when they behaved well, stayed quiet, or solved problems for others. Over time, they began connecting love with effort and sacrifice. The belief formed silently: if I just give enough, if I just try hard enough, someone will finally see my worth. But real connection does not grow from chasing. Love that demands constant proof is not true love. It becomes a test that never ends. Each time you meet the expectation, another one appears. Each time you offer patience, the other person learns that they can give less while still receiving everything from you. And slowly, the balance disappears. You become the only one fighting to keep the relationship alive. This pattern does more than damage relationships. It damages the way you see yourself. When you repeatedly give your energy to someone who cannot meet you halfway, your confidence begins to weaken. You start questioning your worth, your personality, your value. You begin wondering what you are doing wrong, when in reality, the answer may be much simpler than you think. Some people are simply not capable of giving what you are offering. Not because you are unworthy, but because they do not have the capacity. The Stoics believe that true strength comes from inner stability, not external approval. When your sense of worth depends on someone else's attention, you place your emotional balance in their hands. Your happiness rises and falls based on their behavior. But when your value is rooted inside yourself, other people's actions lose their power to define your life. Carl Jung once said that the most frightening thing a person can face is accepting themselves completely. Because once you truly accept who you are, the need for constant validation begins to fade. You stop chasing approval. You stop explaining your worth through effort. Instead, you carry a quiet certainty that your value does not need negotiation. This shift can feel uncomfortable, especially if you have spent years trying to earn love. Stepping back may feel like abandonment. Your mind might whisper that if you stop trying so hard, the relationship will disappear. But sometimes, what disappears was never truly stable to begin with. And in that realization, a deeper strength begins to form, the strength to protect your energy, your dignity, and your sense of self without needing permission from anyone else. But sometimes what disappears was never truly secure in the first place. That is one of the hardest truths to accept, especially in relationships. When someone only stays because you are constantly proving your worth, constantly explaining yourself, constantly trying harder just to keep the connection alive, then that bond is standing on fragile ground. And here on Stoicism Breath, this is where a deeper kind of self-respect begins. Letting go of emotional begging does not mean you have become cold. It does not mean you have stopped caring. It means you have finally decided to protect your heart instead of exhausting it. It means you have learned the difference between love that flows naturally and love that must be chased every single day. Healthy connection feels different. It feels calm. It feels steady. It feels mutual. You do not feel like you are auditioning for a role in someone's life, hoping to be chosen if you say the right thing, do the right thing, or sacrifice enough of yourself. In a healthy bond, both people bring effort, care, and attention without being forced. There is no constant guessing, no endless decoding, no need to shrink yourself just to keep the other person comfortable. And when you stop begging for recognition, something quietly powerful begins to change in you. You become calmer, but also stronger. You stop trying to convince people of your value. You simply watch how they treat you. If someone shows respect, consistency, and care, you allow that connection to grow. But if they show indifference, confusion, or constant inconsistency, you begin stepping back without drama. And that quiet step back is not weakness. It is clarity. It is the moment you decide that your emotional energy deserves to be invested where it is appreciated, not where it is merely tolerated. That is a major shift in how a person lives. Because once you stop trying to repair what you did not break, once you stop explaining feelings to someone who refuses to understand them, your energy starts returning to the one place where it will always matter most, your own life. And that is where peace begins to reappear. Not all at once, but gradually. The tension inside your mind starts to soften. The anxiety of waiting for someone else to choose you begins to fade. And in its place, a different kind of peace begins to grow, the kind that comes from knowing you are no longer negotiating your value. The moment you stop begging for love is the moment you start making room for something healthier. Not perfect, not idealized, but real. Because real love does not need to be forced, chased, or proven again and again. Real love shows up with respect. Real love shows up with consistency. Real love meets you where you are without making you earn basic care. And yet, even after people begin reclaiming their worth in relationships, many still lose their peace in another way, through fear of things that have not even happened. This is one of the strangest habits of the human mind. A person can be sitting in a completely safe room, with no threat in front of them, and still feel anxious, tense, restless, and overwhelmed. Why? Because their thoughts have already started creating problems that do not exist in reality. The body responds as if danger is present, even when nothing around them is actually harmful. This is the quiet power of imagined fear, and it is one of the most common ways people drain themselves without realizing it. The mind is incredibly skilled at running simulations about the future. Before you even try, it predicts failure. Before you even speak, it imagines rejection. Before anything goes wrong, it tells you that something probably will. You think about having one honest conversation, and suddenly your mind gives you the worst possible outcome. You think about starting something new, and immediately it shows you embarrassment, disappointment, or loss. Without noticing it, you begin reacting emotionally to scenarios that exist nowhere except inside your own imagination. And at first, this can feel like preparation. It can feel responsible. You may even tell yourself that worrying helps you stay ready. But in truth, constant worry rarely prepares you. More often, it exhausts you. It traps your attention in a future that has not arrived and forces your energy into fighting shadows rather than responding to real life. The Stoics understood this well. They reminded themselves often that many of the things people fear never actually happen. And even when difficulties do come, they rarely unfold in the exact way the mind predicted. Marcus Aurelius observed that much of human anxiety does not come from events themselves, but from the way we interpret them. That insight matters because it means a large part of what disturbs us is not reality. It is the story we keep telling ourselves about reality. The body, however, does not always know the difference. When your mind creates a frightening scenario, your nervous system reacts as though it is already happening. Your breathing changes. Your muscles tighten. Your thoughts speed up. Your attention narrows. Over time, this repeated cycle of imagined danger slowly wears down your peace and stability. And there is another hidden cost to this habit. It stops you from acting. When your mind keeps showing you images of failure, embarrassment, or rejection, you naturally begin avoiding the very situations that could help you grow. Opportunities stay untouched because they feel too risky. Important conversations stay unspoken because your mind has already decided how badly they will go. Fear becomes a barrier that exists only in thought, yet still shapes your real life in powerful ways. Epictetus taught that people are not disturbed by events themselves, but by the views they take of those events. That idea is incredibly freeing once it truly sinks in. It means much of the suffering created by worry is optional. Not because life is easy, and not because pain is imaginary, but because so much of our mental suffering comes from interpretations that have not yet been tested by reality. When you begin questioning those stories, their power begins to weaken. And this does not mean becoming reckless or pretending risk does not exist. Life will always include uncertainty. Challenges will always be part of being human. But there is a real difference between awareness and obsession. Awareness helps you prepare for what is real. Obsession traps you inside endless possibilities that may never come true. The goal, then, is not to eliminate caution. The goal is to stop allowing your mind to turn every unknown into a catastrophe. One of the simplest and most powerful ways to do that is to return to the present moment. Ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not in the worst-case scenario your mind invented. Right now. Are you safe in this moment? Are you capable of taking the next small step? Most of the time, the honest answer is yes. And when your attention settles into the present, the long chain of imagined disasters begins to lose its grip. Another major shift happens when you start trusting your ability to handle problems if they truly arise. Fear usually assumes that if something goes wrong, you will collapse, that you will not know what to do, that you will be powerless. But your own life already proves otherwise. You have been through difficult seasons before. You have faced disappointment, confusion, loss, pressure, and uncertainty. And somehow, step by step, you adapted. You learned. You kept going. That resilience did not disappear. It still lives in you now. And when you remember that, the unknown becomes less terrifying. You no longer feel the need to predict every possible outcome because you begin trusting that whatever happens, you will respond as best as you can. That kind of trust quiets the mind. Situations that once triggered anxiety begin to feel more manageable. You stop spending hours mentally rehearsing conversations that have not happened. You stop exhausting yourself with failures that exist only in imagination. Instead, you let life unfold one step at a time. You respond to what is real instead of reacting to what is feared. And that is where a calmer, stronger way of living begins, not in controlling every possible future, but in trusting yourself enough to meet reality when it arrives. The quiet decision to release imagined fear is one of the most overlooked forms of freedom. It does not remove uncertainty from life, and it does not promise that nothing difficult will ever happen. What it does remove is the unnecessary suffering created by endless anticipation. The suffering that comes not from real danger, but from fighting shadows inside your own mind. And when you stop fighting those shadows, something remarkable happens. You regain energy. Energy that was once wasted on worry begins returning to you. And here at Stoicism Breath, that regained energy becomes the foundation for clarity, strength, and peace. Most of the time, what is actually in front of you is far simpler than your fears suggest. Not a disaster. Not a collapse. Just a conversation waiting to happen. A step waiting to be taken. A decision waiting to be made. A moment of life unfolding right in front of you. But when your mind fills that moment with imagined catastrophe, you never fully experience it. You live inside possibilities instead of reality. Yet when you allow yourself to face the present without carrying the weight of imagined disaster, a quiet strength begins to develop. A calm strength that fear can no longer easily shake. Many people believe exhaustion comes from dramatic moments, a crisis, a painful loss, a year filled with overwhelming challenges. They picture burnout as something sudden and explosive. But the truth is usually quieter than that. Exhaustion rarely arrives all at once. It builds slowly, day by day, through small habits that seem harmless at first. Habits repeated without awareness. Habits that quietly drain your focus, your clarity, and your peace. Think about the world most people live in today. Constant stimulation. Notifications lighting up the screen every few minutes. Messages arriving without pause. News updates competing for attention. Social media feeds that never truly end. Your body may be sitting still, but your mind is constantly moving, jumping from one thought to another, from one piece of information to the next. That noise begins to feel normal. But the human mind was never designed to exist in a permanent state of distraction. Every interruption, no matter how small, takes a piece of your attention. And attention, once scattered, is difficult to rebuild. Something as simple as checking your phone every few minutes breaks your concentration. Comparing your life to carefully edited images online creates dissatisfaction that did not exist before. Listening to arguments, absorbing other people's stress, and carrying opinions that were never yours fills your mind with emotional clutter. Over time, your attention becomes fragmented. And when attention fragments, focus weakens. The ability to concentrate on what truly matters begins slipping away. Another hidden source of exhaustion is the habit of saying yes when you should say no. Many people accept commitments not because they truly want them, but because they fear disappointing others. They agree to extra responsibilities, unnecessary conversations, and emotional burdens that were never meant for them to carry. At first glance, this looks like kindness. It looks like generosity. But when repeated again and again, it slowly turns into neglect, self-neglect. When your schedule fills with obligations that do not match your priorities, your mind begins losing direction. You move from one task to another without ever asking whether those tasks support your well-being. Your time becomes controlled by expectations outside of you rather than choices made by you. Eventually, even the things that once brought joy begin feeling like chores, like items on an endless list, like responsibilities rather than opportunities. The Stoics spoke often about guarding the mind with care. Marcus Aurelius believed that the quality of a person's life depends heavily on the quality of their thoughts. And when your mental space is filled with unnecessary noise, conflict, comparison, distraction, you slowly surrender control of your inner world. Protecting your peace begins with awareness. Awareness of what you allow into your attention. Awareness of what strengthens you and what quietly drains you. Not every conversation deserves your emotional investment. Not every argument deserves your reaction. Not every opinion deserves space inside your thoughts. There is discipline in deciding where your attention goes. And that discipline becomes powerful once you begin limiting the distractions that pull your mind in every direction. When you do that, something shifts. Your energy begins returning. Your thoughts become clearer. Decisions become easier. Simple moments, moments that once passed unnoticed, begin to feel meaningful again. Another essential part of protecting your energy is how you treat your body. Sleep, movement, hydration, and quiet moments of rest may seem basic, but they form the foundation of mental clarity. When the body is exhausted, the mind struggles to stay calm. When the body is neglected, the mind becomes restless. Caring for your physical well-being is not a luxury reserved for special occasions. It is a daily responsibility that protects your inner peace. There is also another silent habit that drains enormous energy: self-criticism. Many people carry an internal voice that constantly points out flaws, mistakes, and imperfections. That voice claims to push improvement. It claims to create discipline. But in reality, it often produces pressure rather than progress. Growth rarely happens through constant self-attack. Growth happens through understanding, through patience, through consistent effort applied with awareness rather than punishment. When you begin treating your mind with respect, something changes in the way you speak to yourself. Instead of asking why you are not doing enough, you begin asking what truly matters. Instead of measuring your value by constant productivity, you begin recognizing the importance of balance. Your energy stops being something you sacrifice endlessly. It becomes something you protect intentionally. Protecting your peace also means accepting a difficult truth. You cannot control everything around you. People will still form opinions. Conflicts will still appear. Unexpected problems will still arise. But not every external disturbance needs to become an internal disturbance. The more you practice allowing unnecessary noise to pass without reacting, the more stable your inner world becomes. Over time, this practice leads to a quiet transformation. Your attention becomes intentional instead of scattered. Your days begin feeling less chaotic. You start choosing environments, relationships, and habits that support your well-being instead of draining it. The heavy exhaustion that once followed you begins fading. In its place appears a calm awareness of where your energy is going and why. The decision to protect your energy may seem simple on the surface, but its impact is powerful. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Where it goes determines the direction of your life. When you stop allowing small habits and outside pressures to steal your attention without permission, you reclaim your focus. And inside that focus, something meaningful begins to grow. Not just productivity, but peace. A steady, grounded calm that comes from knowing your inner world is no longer controlled by everything happening outside of you. And eventually, as this clarity grows, another realization begins to surface. One of the most difficult realizations a person can face. The realization that the version of yourself you have been living as may no longer fit who you are becoming. At first, this awareness appears quietly. Something feels different inside you. The things that once excited you no longer spark the same energy. Conversations you used to enjoy begin feeling empty. Habits that once felt natural start feeling heavy. You cannot always explain what changed. But deep inside, there is a growing sense that you have outgrown a part of your old identity, and that realization is often the first step toward becoming who you are truly meant to be. There comes a moment in life that feels confusing in a way you cannot easily explain. Something inside you shifts, but the world around you still expects you to remain the same. You may try to return to the familiar version of yourself, repeating the same routines, maintaining the same relationships, playing the same roles people have always known you for. From the outside, nothing looks different. But inside, the discomfort does not go away. In fact, it grows stronger. What once felt natural now feels forced, almost like acting in a role you no longer recognize. And the longer you continue performing that role, the more disconnected you begin to feel from your true self. Here at Stoicism Breath, this moment is not seen as failure. It is seen as the beginning of transformation. Many people resist this change because identity feels like stability. When you know who you are supposed to be, life feels predictable. People know how to treat you. You know how to behave. There is comfort in familiarity. But growth does not respect comfort. Growth appears when you learn something new, when you face challenges, when your awareness deepens beyond what it once was. Slowly, parts of your old identity begin falling away, not because you failed, but because you evolved. Carl Jung once wrote that within every person there exists someone they have not yet met. That unknown version of you is not something to fear. It represents your next stage of growth. But meeting that version requires courage, because it means letting go of the image you once relied on to feel safe. It means accepting that the person you were yesterday may not be the person you need to become tomorrow. And this is where many people struggle. The world around you often prefers the predictable version of you. People become comfortable with the role you play in their lives. Maybe you were always the reliable one, the person everyone called when something went wrong. Maybe you were the agreeable one who never challenged others. Maybe you were the achiever, always chasing success, always pushing forward. These roles may have helped you survive earlier seasons of life. They may have protected you when you needed direction. But they do not have to define your future once you begin changing. Some people around you may feel unsettled when they notice that change. They might say, "You're different now," or "You've changed." And in many ways, they are right. Growth always changes you. But the real question is not whether you have changed. The real question is whether you are becoming more honest about who you truly are. The Stoics believe that living with integrity means aligning your life with reason and self-awareness, rather than constantly shaping yourself to meet external expectations. That alignment requires letting go of identities that once protected you but now limit your potential. The person who needed those identities may have been younger, uncertain, and still searching for direction. But the person you are today may be ready for something deeper, something more authentic. And with that readiness often comes another fear, the fear of starting over. When you step away from an old identity, it can feel like losing everything you built. You may worry that all the time, effort, and sacrifice you invested will be wasted. But growth is never wasted. Every experience you have lived through becomes wisdom. Every mistake becomes insight. Every struggle becomes strength. Starting over does not mean returning to zero. It means beginning again with more awareness than before. It means carrying forward everything you have learned and using it as guidance for your next steps. You are not abandoning your past. You are allowing it to support your evolution instead of controlling your future. And this shift rarely begins with dramatic action. It starts with small, quiet decisions. Choosing honesty in a conversation where you once stayed silent. Setting boundaries where you once accepted everything. Exploring interests that reflect who you are now, not who you used to be. Each of these decisions may seem small in isolation, but together they slowly reshape the direction of your life. Over time, you begin to notice something remarkable. A sense of alignment begins to appear. The tension between what you feel inside and how you behave outside begins fading. You no longer feel like you are maintaining an image just to satisfy expectations. Instead, you are living in a way that reflects your present truth. That feeling of alignment is powerful. It brings a sense of calm that cannot be forced or faked. During this transformation, some relationships may shift. Some environments may no longer feel right for the person you are becoming. That can feel uncomfortable, even painful at times. But it is often a natural part of growth. When you step into a more authentic version of yourself, the world around you gradually reorganizes to reflect that authenticity. New connections form. Old patterns dissolve. opportunities begin aligning with who you are now, rather than who you used to be. The courage to become someone new is not about rejecting your past self. It is about respecting the journey that brought you here. The earlier version of you did the best it could with the knowledge, tools, and circumstances available at the time. That version deserves gratitude, not criticism. But life was never meant to keep you frozen in one identity. Life invites movement. It invites learning. It invites expansion beyond the limits you once believed defined you. This transformation rarely arrives with loud announcements or dramatic turning points. More often, it unfolds quietly through daily decisions, moments of reflection where you recognize what no longer belongs in your life. Moments where you choose courage instead of comfort. Moments where you step into uncertainty, because staying the same would mean ignoring the person you are becoming. And as this quiet process continues, confusion begins to fade. Clarity replaces doubt. Your actions begin matching your values more closely. Your direction becomes stronger, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you are finally walking a path that belongs to you. Having the courage to become a new version of yourself is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect a person can make. It is the moment you stop living according to outdated expectations and begin shaping a life that reflects your current understanding of who you are. And when that courage appears, even in small ways, it opens the door to a future that is no longer limited by your past. Instead, it becomes guided by the person you are continuously becoming, step by step, decision by decision, day by day.